Alright guys, so time to answer questions that you guys posted on the channel. Um, so the first one seems more of a comment than a question. So trends with 3 touches are hard to do, often do 2 touches. In a way, I see that as a good thing, because if you have trends all over, how do you know which one will get respected, right? So if you set a criteria and it actually make it a little bit more difficult for you to find the correct trends when you finally find them, that's actually your true trend, right? And if you find them all over, then that's probably not a true trend. That's why probably it's not doing what it's supposed to be doing, right? So, and kind of like, let me clarify that further. Something like this, right? Because some people did ask questions regarding these 2 versus 3 touches rule. So what I'm trying to say is, like, look, this is the bare minimum a trend has to do for you to even consider it a trend, right? Now, it's not that I don't call this a trend. I just don't call it an established trend, right? An established trend has to be tested at least at a 3rd touch, right? And once it gets respected over there, that's when you actually know that, okay, it's clearly trending downwards and this trend is actually doing its job. Because you obviously cannot have a trend with no touch at all, and you can't randomly draw at an arbitrary spot because of the base and say, oh, I expect this trend to be tested in the future. And same thing with the 2nd touch. How do you know that at the 3rd touch it's just not gonna break through it, right? So what is a trend supposed to do? It's so anybody that's watched my FOT version, in the 2nd video, I think it's about trends. So trends has 2 parts. The very latest videos that I uploaded for the beginners, right? So trend is either supposed to compress a move, right? It's supposed to either compress a move in particular direction, right? If you flip this upside down, that'll be an uptrend, right? It's compressing the move upwards. It's giving that support, right? For a downtrend, it's compressing, it's acting as resistance. Now, if finally when this trend actually gets broken, it's supposed to fuel the move, right? So imagine that, let's say even at this touch it came down and slowly it's laddering up and it gets wedged in here. You have an uptrend, right? So from here it's either supposed to completely dump, right, big time, or it's supposed to have that outburst towards the upside, right? So again, something acting as compression, and finally when it gets broken, it actually has that reaction. That's what trends are supposed to do on charts, right? You're supposed to see some reaction when they get broken. But if they're getting broken all the time, what is the purpose of even drawing that trend line, right? Like, I gave you guys the example over here with 2 touches, right? One of the reasons why I hate the 2 touches rule for the trend is because it could easily get broken at the 3rd touch. It didn't even have any reaction on here, or very little reaction. So what was the purpose of you drawing that trend again? Because that trend is either supposed to compress the move, it didn't do that, right? And a trend is supposed to act as fuel, which I doubt it will do when it gets broken, at the 3rd touch. It's not going to do much, because it's not established. People are not looking at it in terms of a trend per se on the charts, right? When it has multiple touches, and the more touches it has, the more of an established trend it is, that everybody will be looking at this because this is a clear trend. It's clearly showing you that it's trending downwards, right? Okay, now let's get back to the questions. What was the next question? So Alex asked over here about origins. Now, he said his question is more regarding if there are multiple origins on different time frames, which one would he take? So I think he mentioned July 28th over here, the chart that he posted at the bottom right here. So his question is more regarding whether it should be a 15-minute origin that he should consider or the 1 hour, right? So let's get to the spot that he's asking. I believe it is July. Yeah, right here. So this is a spot he's referring to. Now, this is the spot, and then I believe he mentioned this spot as a 15-minute. Yeah. Okay, so normally Cotton mentioned in the FOT, unless he changed it now, which he does that all the time, right? Something he puts on the wick, then he puts it on the body, and it's like butterfly effect, freaking 2.0, 3.0, 50.0, he does that all the time. So I'm not surprised if he actually now is teaching people to mark the bodies instead of the wicks. But regardless, what I would say over here, neither are correct, okay? And I'll tell you why. So the alphas that have been with me for too long, they know that I hate the concept of origins. It's not replicable. You can't easily teach it. If you teach it to 50 different people, probably only 5% will get it. The rest, they will be constantly questioning time frame. Why did I have the hard close? Which one is the correct origin? And so on and so forth, right? In this case, there is definitely something. I see a resistance, and it finally broke out. It actually had a big reaction. Yeah, big reaction, right? So probably neither one of them are correct, because this is just a single candle, right? It's not even a valley per se, but start of the valley, because the origin is supposed to be the original valley that failed to gain, right? So, and you're supposed to go further to the left. So probably not a correct one. Let's cut this with the replay tool over here. Do we have something on 3 minutes? I don't think we do. What about 1 minute? You see, so I'm already down to 1 minute. I can't see something, and for accuracy purposes, you always be trying to go down to these smaller time frames, So that's why I hate the concept of origins, to be honest. For those of you, that have been using it and it's working out good for you, go ahead, continue using them if that's what you want, but the alphas, no, I hate the concept of origins. I prefer the concept of bases a lot more, right? So, and I'll but let me answer the question regarding the origins first, right? So definitely there is something, but perhaps not over here. Might have to actually zoom out, probably see over here. Yeah, it seems like there is something here. So either it's something over here, or you kind of have, like, because of this wick, I know even though it's continuation of the same red candle valleys, there's, because of this wick, I can see probably there's something in here. So let's see which one is more correct, so we can erase this one. Okay, the upper one probably is not the correct one. Why? Because it only had one touch and just didn't act as resistance. However, the bottom one, yeah, seems more correct. Do we have something here on 1 hour? Let's double check. No, not really. Nothing on 1 hour, and I doubt there will be something on a bigger time frame. So yeah, that's perhaps the one. Because the problem is with this big, these candles over here, I wouldn't want to go to a small time frame, because I'm pretty sure if I go to a small time frame, there will be hard close above it, right? So yeah, you see hard closes, and that's the problem with these origins, right? You always have to keep going further to the back, which is not an issue. It's just that, there's not a clear cut criteria that you could give someone, which is why so many people, even though they've been part of his community for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, till this day, a lot of them, they're questioning the concept of origins, and that's why I prefer the concept of bases a lot more. Having said that, this is the origin. This is the origin. As you can see, it's like, never had a hard close. But then another problem with these origins is that you will sometimes see them hard closing above them and still doesn't have that reaction, right? So it's like, you won't really know that it wasn't an origin until it actually really breaks out and goes, towards the upside. Then you can be like, oh, it used to be an origin over here, But in the moment, you can't really see resistance on some of them. On a lot of them you will, like over here you see in the moment we could see it's acting as resistance, and finally when it broke out, it just had shot up, right, and could probably backtest that same area again. Now, why do I prefer the concept of bases a lot more? I'll show you guys. So over here I saw a whole level, so right here, see, and for those that are beginners, that haven't been through butterfly effect and whatnot, origin is basically a valley like this or this, right, that it failed to gain. It touched it several times and never had a hard close above it, right? However, base, on the other hand, it's a whole level from the past that has been touched multiple times and failed to have a close above it. And once it has a hard close above it, it has that reaction, right? So over here, you see how its base is acting a lot more solidly as resistance. You see how the touch is a lot cleaner here, and then just finally when it broke out, it just had that reaction. So again, bases and origins, they're usually very close to each other. I find the concept of bases a lot more solid. Okay, now more about bases. I would talk in probably the advanced videos, or it's more of the mentorship stuff, but I prefer the concept of bases. I rarely ever use origins anymore. Probably on altcoins I might, but on Bitcoin I don't. But bases, they work on everything, right? Origins, you always tend to question which one should I mark, right? And now, to answer your other question regarding if there are multiple ones, which one would you consider? That could apply both to bases and to origins, okay? So let's say there are 3 different time frames, and this is, let's say, 12-hour. The other one is, the bottom one is 4-hour, and the one below that is, let's say, 15 minutes, right? So which one should you consider? Well, technically we could probably put the lowest time frame above over here, right? So my question would be, which was the original time frame it got created on? So if the valley happens to be on 15-minute, then you're going to consider the 15-minute. You're not going to consider these other time frames. However, the biggest time frame over here is 12-hour. So the 12-hour hard close will also be important, because this one also got established over time. So, but the 15-minute is going to show you the resistance in the moment, where it will have multiple touches, right? Multiple touches, and finally when it actually has a hard close, it'll just gonna have that upward breakout. But as I said, on some origins you actually have a hard close and still doesn't have that reaction. It goes below it. That's why I hate the concept of origins. So that's how I'll probably summarize it. Okay, now what is the next question? The next question was regarding, I believe, O levels. Let me see. So here's, in this exact sequence of trend videos, lesson 3, you say you go one hard close at a time, and then you say you have minimum 3 touches, which is the prerequisite. Well, to draw a trend line, I meant, to draw a trend line, you will go one hard close at a time. And again, it's just an established trend would be when you actually have that third touch. That's when you would consider that trend to be important on your chart. Let's put it that way, right? And then you said this would then become inactive, invalidated, if it actually had a hard close, and doesn't have the 3 touches anymore. So basically what you're trying to say is something like this, if I'm not mistaken. You're saying, let's say it actually has 3 touches, right? So 1, 2, 3. Now it's an established trend, right? Now if it actually breaks out, what your question is, if it actually breaks out, let's say it actually found the one of the cycle over here, right? And then it just broke out, right? Now, I suppose your question is, with this new trend over here, like which you will adapt the same trend line over here, right? So I'm leaving the original one instead of adapting it, actually, just to clear out confusion. So then people are not complaining that they're confused. Let's adapt this trend over here. Now, what is the problem with this trend? First problem is you have to have a stopping point somewhere, which means you have to have a distribution candle, confirmed distribution candle over here. Otherwise, I'm not even going to consider this a possibility of a trend, right? Because you have to have a pullback. You have to have a pullback, right? It has to complete a swing, right? And it has to have a pullback, right? Once it has a pullback, then after that, you will consider this a trend line at the third touch, because at the third touch, it will give you the confirmation that it is a trend that is acting as compression, as a resistance, right? Because if you don't do that, how do you know that, you know, it's not going to get broken again, right? Again, a trend has to show you a trending market. Otherwise, it's useless to draw on our charts, okay? Now, there is such a thing as trend viscosity and whatnot for the intermediate and advanced people that have been through butterfly effect. You guys know what I'm talking about, or the interior exterior trends. There are some different prerequisites we have, you know, but again, that's more of the advanced mentorship stuff. But for now, to keep things simple, for it to be an established trend, let it have a third touch. And what do I mean by the pullback over here? For at least for the guys that don't know what I'm talking about, let's talk about let's talk about this daily time frame interior trend here at the very bottom. So probably, since I talked about the downtrend, now I'm going to talk about the uptrend, just so we can actually have a little different perspective of an uptrend as well, so people are not confused then, right? It's the exact same thing, it's just mirror image. You basically flip it upside down, right? So let's say if this is a trend, right? You went one hard close at a time, or you just put it at the swing over here, right? So let's cut it over here. At this point, would people call this an uptrend? I want you to pause for one quick second and answer this question. Would you consider this an uptrend? Ignore the fact or even a possibility of an uptrend. I know it's not an established trend, nothing to do with the third touch. What is there a possibility of it being an uptrend? The answer is no. Why not? Because you don't have a, in this case, it will not be a pullback. It will be a, yeah, I suppose call it pullback. I don't know what to call it, because if you flip this upside down, it'll be a pullback from here, right? A pull upwards. I don't know. Right? Rejection. Let's rejection might be a better term. So a rejection over here will be when you actually have a if it completes a swing over here and then it goes upwards, right? And for that you need a accumulation candle. How could you call this a trend or even a possibility of a trend, when it hasn't really acted as a trend? Right? So let's go one hard close at a time. Now with this, imagine this is finished printing. Would you call this a pullback or a resistance? It acted as a resistance? No, not yet, right? What about this? Yes, because first of all, it gave you a third touch, which is good, right? And there is a difference between this and this a little bit, enough, because not the continuation. If let's say a third touch was right here along with this, like this, right? If it's too close, I prefer it not to have the touches like along with the same candle, the continuation. I want it to be a little bit of pullback and then touch that. So in this case, sure, I will call this a third touch, right? But the third touch is not something what I want you guys to pay attention to. I want you to pay attention to the green candle over here, and then it goes up from here. So there you go. Now at this point it is acting as a trend, right? So this is sort of what I'm talking about. You have to have that pullback factor, okay? Otherwise it's not a trend per se. I don't think this got touched again, but if it had, it would have been respected, yeah, I don't think it oh, actually it did right here. Perfect example. You see how it actually respected over here. Sure, it went a little bit below it, but that's not what we're discussing in this lesson, right? The point is it did not have a hard close below it. So there you go. Perfect. Now let's go back to the next question. So okay, that's out of the way. Now over here, I suppose you talked about, so let's say you have a distribution candle followed by 2 accumulation candles. Okay, so that'll be a support. Hold, the first one doesn't hard close but has a huge wick, meaning there might be interplay internal testing. The second one hard closes. According to what I understood, it would still be marked as a valid hold on that time frame as long as the hard close candle doesn't touch it, the internal testing criteria. However, I'm confused because the logic flow section of butterfly effect states that you should dig into the candle that have wicks like that. First few minutes of that video shows. So I'm not going to go through this lesson because it's going to make the video a lot longer, and he contradicts himself all the time. Till this day I see him marking these internally tested holds, which I don't consider valid holds, as you guys saw from my video the other day, right? So again, please try to have the you can take a print screenshot from his lesson if needed, or to put your question in very simple terms. Keep them really brief, otherwise just wastes time, right? So I'm not going to go through this, but what I will do is, you had some examples over here, so I'll go through those, and I suppose it's related to exactly what you're talking about. So in this case, you see this is a whole level, right? The top of this will be marked as whole level, so that's fine. And then you said the wick might indicate internal testing. No, this is from the bottom, okay? From the bottom is not something I worry about. I do worry about it if there are too many touches. Like there's a criteria that I have, but again, this is more for the advanced videos, and I don't want to confuse the other people, but or for the mentorship guys, right? So there is a criteria that I came up with that from the bottom, if it touches a support hold for a long position, excuse me, what is the criteria I use for that, right? But in this case, it has a hard close, and if there's no wick sticking below this, so there's no internal testing, it's fine. From the bottom though, I don't consider this internal testing, okay? So it is fine. This I wouldn't worry too much about this. The cleaner the better, but again, it's okay. Now the next example, in the next drawing over here, so this is fine. This was what we looked at before. This is not. This is internally tested. The hard close has to be not on the same candle. The hard close has to happen, and then we buy it, right? So it should not be internally tested or tested like in the future for us to consider that hold for buying, right? In this case, you see the hard close above this level right here happened along with this in the same candle where the wick happened. So internal testing, this is what I refer to as internal testing, okay? Would view this, no, this is at the bottom. We're not worried about this. We're worried about, so the level is marked over here. We're worried about what is happening to that level. Okay, that is what we're worried about. Here at the bottom, that's not our concern. Okay. Now Mix asked a question over here, and please guys, just one question. I don't want to single anybody out, but don't, because it's not only Titan that did that, but several people, and probably probably need to put a clearer message over here. This is only for me. This is for Rotten Fandy material question, okay? So let me answer all these questions. If you guys want to answer those same questions, if you think you can answer them, or, sure, you can by all means do that. You can start another thread over here, or copy that particular message and put it on the general TA questions, and you can refer to those questions and try to answer those, okay? So by the way, Mix, to okay, okay, don't know what this is, but okay, sure. I mean, you know, the questions were supposed to be submitted by yesterday, but sure, I'll try to answer this one at the bottom as well, because he answered this. I mean, he asked this like a few minutes ago, but okay, this is nothing. You probably, if you're referring to this, this is a possible hold. However, there's internal testing over here. You may have to rewatch the whole levels video that I did for FOT, and then watch the advanced version that I did, that I uploaded in the first batch of 5 videos. Okay, seems like, you know, you still are having difficulty understanding the whole levels, which is fine. We all went through that, so you know, there's nothing to feel bad about. We all started where you're starting. Okay, so yeah, there, like this candle is nothing yet from what you've posted over here. This is nothing, right? This could be a hard close confirmation for this whole level. However, it already got internally tested, as I pointed out in Alex's. So it you know, if it's like tested from the top like this without having the hard close first, then it's internally tested, right? Which is similar to what you have posted over here, right? For this guy. Now this is nothing. Okay. Now in regards to where was the question? Yeah, this. You asked why did this have a reaction over here on ACH? I think I have this open with me right here. So right, you asked about this, right? You asked about this level. So it was basically an inverse, meaning a resistance inverse hold, right? Inverse hold are the ones on the opposite side of the chart, right? They're the resistance. Regular hold, we refer to them as hold levels, and inverse holds are the ones that are on the you know, top side of the chart, and we refer to them as inverse holds, right? Like inverted holds, right? So it was acting as a resistance. Finally, it broke out, and you know, so the concept is, you know, resistance turning into support. However, more accurately, it actually tested this backside hold over here, you know, and it just went up from here. So I suppose that would answer that. And now I'm not entirely sure. You said the whole level crushed through. Yeah, I mean, look, this happens quite often. That's why you have to figure out where your accurate leg is, right? And that's why I teach break levels way different than how Cotton teaches them. And you know, the alphas, they know why I don't agree with Cotton's break levels. But yeah, that's about it for this session of answering these questions, and see you guys later.